Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Fridays, which means it's time for French-sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. And in today's episode, we talk to Dr. John Burd. Dr. John Burd is the renowned scientist and founder and former CEO of Dexton Include, the leader in the continuous glucose monitoring system. His current research is focused on the toxic sugar coating that happens when excess glucose binds to and changes proteins in our bloodstream, a process called protein glycogen. Dr. Burd is the founder of Lysine and a #1 selling author of The Natural Solution to Diabetes Epidemic, The Discovery of Lyslin. Dr. Burd has dedicated his career to helping people, members, and others to achieve health. Some of the hobbies that he absolutely loves doing, he loves card playing, bridge, poker, and he's also a former golfer. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Dr. John.
Thank you so much for having me, Mahela.
You're most welcome. So a former golfer, so you enjoy golf?
I used to like to golf, but I was a terrible golfer. I could never break 100. So I finally gave up after, 65 years of frustration.
65 years of frustration, not fun.
Yeah. So I'm happier working actually. So I love to work. So
yeah, amazing. That's awesome. That's amazing. So tell us, you said you love working. Tell us about the stuff that you do. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey. What has led you to where you are now? I mean, you're still working now. Why? What's happening? What's happening in your life, Dr. John?
Well, I have a PhD in biochemistry. And my first job out of school, I worked for the Ames division of Miles Laboratories. It was purchased by Bayer in the 1980s, but I was there in the 1970s. And Ames was the company that had the first products for people with diabetes. They developed a urine dipstick to measure glucose in urine. And then they later developed a system to measure blood glucose from a finger stick sample. And every corporate meeting we had, we would always have a lot of discussion about these great new products for people with diabetes, because back in the 70s, it was a big problem. It wasn't nearly the problem that it is today, but always a lot of discussion. So I've had 50 years of being touched by diabetes products. And I've spent my career developing medical testing products, primarily for clinical labs, doctors' offices, and home use, like pregnancy and ovulation tests and strep throat and that sort of thing. And in 1999, I joined a venture capital group here in San Diego, and our first investment was in Dexcom, DEXCOM, and Dexcom was developing a sensor to monitor glucose without having to do finger sticks. It was, the product is on the market. We started the company in 2000 and went public in 2005 and started selling product in 2005. And there are 2 or 3 different companies that make continuous glucose monitors, but Dexcom is the world leader, helping over 2 million people now to better health without having to stick their fingers, which is a big relief. And I got interested in Lysulin because one of my co-founders sent me an email, told me to work on something important like glucose toxicity. And I had never heard that term before, but now I'm an expert. And as it turns out, as you may know, we need glucose for the energy we use every day, but it's also toxic. It's like cyanide in our blood, basically, because it reacts with all the proteins in our eyes and in our fingertips and our kidneys and in our blood vessels. And this reaction of glucose with our proteins is called glycation. And Lysulin is the only product that targets the cause of insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes, which is this glycation of insulin and its receptor on the cells. And basically insulin is supposed to fit into this receptor on the cell like a key in a lock. And when you glycate insulin and its receptor, it no longer fits in the lock. And that's what causes high blood sugar levels and insulin resistance. Actually, if you wanted to, you could show that video about insulin resistance, which describes it again, what I just said, if you want to run that, that's a short 2-minute video. And
Beautiful.
perfect.
I'll play that now. I'll play the video, what causes insulin resistance.
Okay.
What causes insulin resistance? Is it high blood glucose? The answer is yes and no. Let me explain. Insulin resistance leads to high blood glucose. That's true. Too many carbohydrates in our diet leads to glucose in our blood. If there's too much glucose in your blood, that leads to glucose toxicity. So, what causes insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is the result of glucose toxicity. We need glucose for energy, but glucose is also a reactive chemical, like a poison, that reacts with all the proteins in our bloodstream and all of our organs. This is called glycation. When a protein is glycated, it no longer functions normally. What can be done to improve insulin resistance? Only one product targets and can halt the glycation of proteins. That product is the nutritional supplement Lysulin. Lysulin is all natural and safe and available at low cost without a prescription. Clinical studies prove that Lysulin improves insulin resistance.
There you go. So we shared that. We shared the video, and I'll also put it on the link below so individuals can have a look at it themselves if they want to.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, it's a nice short explanation of insulin resistance. And the other video, which is Lysulin, explains a little bit also about how Lysulin stops that glycation reaction from happening. I don't know if you want to wrap up this portion by showing the Lysulin video. We could do that. If you'd rather not, that's fine too. It's about 2 minutes. It's similar to the one you just saw.
Yeah, we'll play it now, and then we'll talk about it and go into more detail so people can understand.
Perfect.
We'll do that now. I'll share the screen now.
Okay. There we go.
Right.
Perfect.
Being diagnosed with unhealthy blood glucose is never good. And you might be wondering what options you have to help you towards better health. Sometimes changing your diet helps if you can cut calories and carbohydrates. If that fails, doctors usually prescribe drugs, sometimes several of them. These drugs treat the symptom of high blood glucose, but not the cause of the problem. The cause of insulin resistance is glucose toxicity due to our diet and the consumption of too many carbohydrates, which are converted to glucose in our blood. Glucose is toxic because it reacts with all the proteins in our body, including insulin and the insulin receptors on our cells, so these proteins do not function properly. This glucose toxicity can lead to insulin resistance, which can lead to kidney problems, eye problems, difficulty with wound healing, and cardiovascular disease. Now for some good news. It has been shown that if people can reduce calories and the consumption of carbohydrates, along with implementing moderate exercise combined with nutritional supplements like Lysulin, this can help to achieve healthy blood glucose levels. Lysulin is the only product that targets the cause of insulin resistance. Lysulin was formulated by Dr. John Burd, a diabetes scientist who was also the founder and CEO of Dexcom, which is now the world's leader in continuous glucose monitoring. Lysulin's safe, healthy, and natural formula acts like a glucose sponge so that glucose does not end up becoming toxic. And Lysulin has been proven to work in clinical studies. Please visit www.lysulin.com and start today to help yourself to better health.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. You're welcome. Thanks for sharing those videos with us. I appreciate it.
I guess the bottom line is food is the best medicine, and food can kill us. And thanks to the government and the farm industry and the food industry and the medical community, they have everybody on these high carb, low fat diets, which is just the opposite of what we should be eating for health. if you get on a low carb, high fat, high protein diet, that'll be the best thing you can do for your health. So we always urge people, in addition to using Lysulin, to inhibit or to stop insulin resistance. We urge them to use our Lysulin supplement and use a low carb diet plan with moderate exercise and some fasting if possible. Those are also great things you can do.
But before we get into the interesting part about Lyslin and so forth, I wanted to know, why were you so interested in diabetes? Like what caused you to be interested in the whole concept of diabetes? Like, was there a scenario, or did you have diabetes? Did any of your family have it? What got you so interested in it?
Well, I was named after an uncle who died of the complications of diabetes, Uncle John. And so that was kind of always there. And then, as I said, I worked at the Ames division of Miles Laboratories that was developing products for people with diabetes. So I was aware of the health problem there. And then, as I said, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. And now I have a lot of family members who have diabetes. And I think you mentioned my book I wrote, which is the natural solution to the diabetes epidemic, the discovery of Lysulin. And then there it describes how I came to with the formulation. And we now have 7 issued patents on the formulation to try to keep others from copying what we're doing. But I'm willing to license the patents out to others just to get the product into the hands of as many people as possible, to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, 100%. And I can see that you're doing it from a good heart, and you're wanting people to not have diabetes and prevent that. It was interesting that you mentioned a little bit about diabetes, like the root cause. You said food. You said food either helps us or doesn't help us. And you mentioned about carbohydrates and fats. So would that be the only cause of diabetes? Are there other causes, root causes of diabetes, or is that the only one, food?
Well, there's actually about 3 or 4 different types of diabetes, but the major ones are type 1 diabetes, and that is an autoimmune disease. That's where your body attacks your pancreas so that it can't produce insulin. And in order to live, you have to take insulin shots. And that was a big moment in history when insulin was discovered by 2 scientists in Canada, Banting and Best, and they got the Nobel Prize for it. And now type 2 diabetes, which is the major form of diabetes that we have around the world, comes from the diet, basically, and the too many carbohydrates. And you can thank the government for that stupid food pyramid that they published in 1980. And, if you follow diabetes and obesity over time, when they introduced that, it started rising dramatically. And basically the government wanted, for the farmers, wanted to have people eat a lot of wheat and corn and rice and other things that they were growing. They were trying to help the farmers. And unfortunately, they may have helped the farmers, but they hurt a lot of people with that high carb, high sugar, high fructose syrup, diet. It's just terrible. And I mean, doctors get basically no education on nutrition. And it is one of the largest, best, huge thing you can do for your health. So it's tragic that they know nothing about nutrition.
Yeah, it's interesting, back to the food pyramid, that they assisted the farmers and it seemed to have helped them. But in the long term, they created this issue, this pandemic of diabetes, which impacts not only the States, not only Australia, it's impacting every single country now, worldwide.
It's an epidemic worldwide. And I've written to all of my congressmen, the Department of Human Health Services, and every president that's still living, saying, if you want to have a real legacy, you can stop diabetes. You can halt the epidemic by just recommending that people get off of carbohydrates. And I have gotten zero response. I mean, they have no interest. They'd rather You got the war on drugs and the war on cancer and things like that. Well, the war on diabetes is one we can win because it's scientifically proven that with diet and exercise and some counseling that you can reverse diabetes. And we actually have published data showing that people with prediabetes, which is sort of you're on the road to diabetes. If you have prediabetes, if we did a clinical study, published it, that showed that we could stop that progression from prediabetes to type 2 diabetes and improve insulin resistance. It's published. It's a fact.
So how would someone know that they're pre-diabetic? How would someone know that they're pre-diabetic and on their way to diabetes?
Well, the way diabetes gets diagnosed is with a laboratory test for hemoglobin A1C. It's also called A1C. Give me a second. And we also sell a home test that you can do this test right in your own home. It takes 5 minutes. And we sell this on our website. And it's a fabulous companion product because basically there's a chart that shows how your A1C is related to your diabetes. And if you're below 5.7%, 5.7%, you're normal. 5.7 to 6.5 is called prediabetes, and above 6.5 is type 2 diabetes. And we know that with Lysulin, 70% of users will see their A1C drop in only 1 month. So
wow.
It doesn't drop your glucose immediately. And a lot of people think that it's like insulin, where if you take an insulin shot, your A1C or your blood glucose will drop immediately. But Lyslin takes a month to build up in your bloodstream and provide its benefit.
Yeah. So A1C, for the audience who doesn't know what A1C is, are you able to just touch base on so people understand what they're measuring?
Yeah, A1C measures what's called glycated hemoglobin. And again, it's all of our proteins get glycated. And this measures one particular hemoglobin variant that gets glycated, and it's called hemoglobin A1C. And our red blood cells turn over every 3 months. So you get new red blood cells, and they eventually get glycated and so on. So it gives you your average 2 to 3 month blood sugar. There's a chart that compares it, that shows its comparison to normal and prediabetes and diabetes. And that's what it measures, that specific hemoglobin.
Yeah. And that's a perfect thing to have at home to measure yourself, because usually you have to go to the doctors to do it, right? And for you to be able to do it yourself. So what do you have to do? Do you have to, the old way that diabetes used to be measured, is it a prick in the blood, or how do you measure it with that machine that you just showed us, or the product?
Yeah, it's a finger stick, and you collect the blood in a little sampling device and then dilute it a little bit and then put it in this little meter and test strip. And it's like a glucose test, but it's not measuring glucose. It's measuring hemoglobin A1C.
Yeah.
So it's a different product. And there are a lot of meters on the market where you can measure your glucose, but that just tells you what your glucose is right at that moment in time. And it doesn't tell you if you're going up or going down or whatever.
Which is affected by so many factors, right?
Yeah, mainly what you eat. Your best glucose test is what's called a fasting blood glucose, which is eat glucose in the morning before you eat breakfast.
So what should that be? What should that be for someone who's
It should be less than 100. If it gets above 120, that's a warning signal.
Yeah. So if someone is so-called pre-diabetic, they'll test their H1C, and then would they have any signs or symptoms that they may be going towards diabetes, or would it just be that blood test that they would measure?
If you Google diabetes symptoms, I mean, for type 1 diabetes, where you don't make any insulin, those folks are usually thin, and they have to pee all the time. They're always thirsty and they're always peeing. And that's two of the big signs. And for type 2 diabetes, sometimes obesity is related to type 2 diabetes, and, no energy, that sort of thing. But if you Google it, there'll be a list of symptoms of diabetes.
Yeah, amazing. And some of those symptoms are can impact someone's life dramatically. Fatigue and so forth. So all of these things can impact them. But you're here saying that you can fix that by simply as adjusting a few things in your life. But I wanted to talk about, so recent studies have demonstrated that numerous herbal and supplements have been beneficial in patients by improving their glucose and lipid metabolism, antioxidant status, disease prevention, and so forth. So how does the ingredients in Lyslin, which is lysine, vitamin C, and zinc together assist in reducing the blood sugar levels? How do they work together?
Well, basically, when I came up with the solution to glucose toxicity, lysine was the immediate answer. But I knew that I could not get a patent on selling lysine for glucose toxicity. So I looked for other supplements that also were known to have a benefit. And there I discovered that zinc and vitamin C were both supplements that you could buy without a prescription. And they both had a beneficial effect on lowering your A1C. And in the case of zinc, also improving your insulin resistance, because insulin requires zinc in order to function properly. And a lot of the world is zinc deficient because when they process food, they process zinc out of it. So you end up with a zinc deficiency. So for our formulation, we optimize the concentrations of lysine, zinc, and vitamin C to give optimum benefit with the least side effects. And unlike drugs, which have a lot of side effects, you don't have side effects with Lysulin.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So lysine in itself, can you give us a little bit of background about what it is and where is it found? Because a lot of people that are listening, they've heard about vitamin C, they've heard about zinc, but they probably haven't heard about lysine.
Yeah, lysine is an amino acid, and all of the proteins that we have in our body and everywhere are made up of 20 amino acids. And we can manufacture some of them in our own body. But lysine is one that you need to get from your diet. So that's why we all have lysine in our bloodstream normally, but its concentration is very, very low. Like if normal glucose is 100 mg per deciliter, lysine is about 0.4, and so when we formulated Lyslin, we put a lot of lysine in it. So you get 3 grams of lysine a day by taking our product.
Yeah, that's a pretty large dose.
Well, yeah, but you can actually, people have taken up to 9 grams a day. And lysine, if you Google lysine, you'll find its health uses. Primarily is used for herpes infections, amazingly.
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of people who have cold sores or anything like that, they usually use lysine to combat the arginine.
I actually have another company and another product that has a fabulous product for cold sores, but we're not going to talk about that today. It's called Wonder Spray.
Nice, beautiful. So people can look that up if they're interested.
Yeah, actually the website for that is www.thewonderspray. You got to put the in front of it.
You got to put
okay. This is a picture of what it looks like. So Wonder Spray Skin Rescue. It's available on the Wonder Spray website, Amazon, and Walmart.
Beautiful. And I'll put the link below so people can look into that if they are interested to look into it more. I'll put the link there for them. So in regards to Lyslin, while we're still talking about it, so how does it actually improve insulin resistance and better cell function overall together?
Well, Lyslin with the lysine, basically, it stops that reaction of the glucose, excess glucose in your blood, that reaction with insulin and the insulin receptor. So if you can block that reaction, insulin works properly. You don't have insulin resistance. And in addition, zinc makes insulin work better because you have to have zinc as a what's called a cofactor to get proper insulin function. So lysine and zinc working together can improve insulin function and get rid of insulin resistance.
I love it. It sounds so simple. I love it. Some people might be listening and being like they've suffered from diabetes their whole life. And Dr. John, you're sitting there and you're like, it could be fixed so simply. And you've worked so.
It is incredible, isn't it? I mean, it's like such a simple solution to a really complicated disease.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Like I'm just sitting here and people that are listening might be like, so Dr. John, you're saying it's this simple. You just block that reaction and this Lysine stops the reaction of happening, and therefore insulin's supposed to do its job that it's supposed to do. And it's crazy. And then you also said, diet. You also said lifestyle, such as walking and so forth. You mentioned in there, and I'm coming back to it, you said counselling. You said counselling. What is the role of that in the whole process of diabetes?
I've got a friend. If Lysulin doesn't work, like for 30% of the time, it doesn't seem to help people, I send them to her because she has diabetes herself, and Lysulin actually worked well for her. And what she does is counsel people into a better diet and exercise. And really, counseling just means that somebody is watching over you and pestering you. Oh, did you walk around the block today? Have you taken your supplements today? It's basically just reminders. Just the counseling is just really reminding you of the things you should be doing and the things you should not be doing.
Kind of like an accountability partner that puts you into accountability and gets you to do the things that you're supposed to be doing to get the results. Because sometimes we don't get the results because a lot of people or individuals don't put in the work that they're supposed to be putting in.
Yep, exactly.
Beautiful. So with these Lyslin, do you take it before meals, after meals, in the morning, at night? When is the best time to take it?
Well, we basically have Lysulin in several forms. I mean, this is the capsules. We also have tablets. And if you get capsules or tablets, you need to take 6 a day. So that we recommend you take them with meals, like 2, 2, and 2, or you can take 3 in the morning and 3 at night. Or actually, you can take all 3 at once if you want to pound down that many. We also then came up with a Lysulin powder, which has got a little scoop in here, and you just put a scoop of that in a cup of water, and you just do that once a day. And that, so you only do it in the morning or at night, either one. And we just recently introduced our weight loss shake, which is a weight loss shake, chocolate or vanilla. And you just put a scoop in water and put it in a shaker bottle and shake it up. And it gives you a day's dose of Lysulin. And you can also, if you want to, use like the shake or the powder and then take a capsule or tablet every time you eat as well, if you want to double up a little bit.
Yeah. That's amazing. So is there any benefits of using the powder over the tablet or over the capsule? Is there, because sometimes individuals say, vitamin C is best in powder and so forth. Is one better than the other?
No, they all work exactly the same. All the formulations get Lysulin into your bloodstream. So, I came up with this. We also have a liquid Lysulin. I don't think I held that bottle up, liquid. And that
you look after everyone. If someone doesn't like powder, if they don't like liquid, you look after everyone. You just want to get it in them.
It is for people. I mean, a lot of people don't want to take 6 capsules or tablets a day.
Correct.
So for them, we recommend the either the liquid or the powder or the shake. And the liquid is 3 teaspoons a day. Again, you can divide them out over the day or do them all at once. And it and the powder both taste a little bit like salty lemonade. So, but if people don't like the taste, or if, some people don't like the artificial sweeteners that you have to put into these things to make them palatable. And if you don't want artificial sweeteners, then we recommend the capsules, because the capsules have only lysine, zinc, and vitamin C in them. You don't have artificial, either stevia or sucralose or that sort of thing.
Yeah. And with Lysine, are there any contraindications where someone can't take it if they're taking other diabetes medications such as metformin or?
None that we found. In fact, a lot of people, virtually everyone, doctors love to write prescriptions. So virtually every person with type 2 diabetes gets put on a drug. And the most common one these days is metformin. And a lot of people have intestinal problems with it and so on, and really don't like metformin. So I've had a lot of people actually get off of other medications and just use Lysulin. And you know that by testing your A1C. And if your A1C drops, that's a clue that Lysulin is working for you and you should stick with it. What was the other thing I was going to say about that? Oh, a lot of people ask, well, do I have to take this for the rest of my life? And if you get put on insulin shots, I hate to hear when people type 2 diabetes get on insulin shots, because that basically just turns them into addicts, because they're going to need more and more insulin, and it works less and less well because you have insulin resistance. And unlike insulin, Lysulin, if you achieve your A1C goal, let's say you start insulin and your A1C is 8 and you get down to 5.2 after a few months, you can actually go from 3 servings a day to 2 servings a day and keep monitoring your A1C. If it stays down, go from 2 to 1 serving a day. And if it again stays down, go from 1 to 0 servings a day. And you just keep monitoring your A1C. And if it starts to rise again, then you start your Lysulin again. So, but not necessarily, it may be that you actually can get off of your diabetes medicines. And if you combine a low carb diet with Lysulin, you may be able to get off of Lysulin and everything if you can maintain that low carb situation. If you can't do it, then you can go back on Lysulin again.
Yeah.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
100%. On that point, a lot of individuals might be listening and being like, well, why should I get off low carb? Why low carb? Why is that so key? Why is it so important?
Why what?
Why is low carb so important?
Well, because carbohydrates are what leads to insulin resistance. Carbohydrates are the devil's work, really. It's like amazing how, I like everybody, carbohydrates, you put enough sugar on carbohydrates, it tastes good. So that it's really hard to get off of carbohydrates. I've got people say, oh, I love my ice cream. I couldn't possibly do without that. Or, oh, I love my pasta. I can't possibly live without pasta. Well, the truth is you can live, and you can live better without them if you can force yourself to get off of them.
Yeah.
And there's really not any good low carb snacks. All snacks, if you get a low carb snack, most of them taste like cardboard. And I've tried a bunch of them, but I've yet to find one that's really satisfying. Actually, a good, if eggs are a great protein source, and actually sometimes when I have a Lysulin shake, I'll put an egg in it to make it higher protein. So it gives you more protein, but yet no carbohydrates.
Yeah. So from what you said before, you are actually giving the individual empowerment and hope to take the diabetes in their own hands. You're saying you can measure your A1C by yourself. You can take the supplement, you can change your diet, you can do the walking, and then measure it every month to see where you are going. So essentially the individual can take control of their own diabetes and of their own health themselves.
Exactly. Take control. That's important.
That's a huge statement for a lot of people that might be listening.
If you trust your doctor, you're going to end up, like in America, obese, diabetic, hooked on multiple drugs and still sick. And basically they prescribe drugs. And if you got a side effect, here, try this prescription for this to treat this side effect. All these drugs treat symptoms, not the cause. So, that's a big selling point for Lyslin. It targets the cause, not just the symptom.
Yeah, and allows you to take control of your own health into your own hands, and you yourself are able to see the measurements. And it's quite simple from what you said. It's pretty simple. You measure it, you take the supplement, you do the exercise, you change the diet, then you measure it again, and so forth until you reach the target level of your glucose. That's too simple.
It is simple, isn't it?
But the hard part is getting rid of that pasta, right? For most people, the pizza and the pasta and the cookies and all that. I guess that is the hard part. But I mean, if an individual wants to achieve the health, they themselves will be able to do this with assistance if needed.
It's interesting, actually. If you look at certain populations like the American Eskimo, before the American Eskimo got McDonald's, they had no diabetes. And now their diabetes is just as rampant as anywhere else because they are poisoning themselves with carbohydrates. But that's pretty good evidence that carbohydrates are the cause, because Eskimos basically just ate blubber and protein.
Yeah. Is there any part of the world that is really low in diabetes? Any countries or part of the world that diabetes may be even non-existent?
Well, like I said, the Eskimos, it was virtually non-existent, but almost it's the same everywhere because McDonald's is everywhere. If you can find a place on the planet that doesn't have McDonald's, you may find some place that doesn't have diabetes. Although, if people live and they graze and they eat grains, basically, if they just ate protein from meat, they wouldn't have diabetes. But most every place also combines grains, some type of bread in their meal,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, when you look at tradition, bread is a staple in a lot of cultures because it was produced in masses, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I talk to my grandma who's overseas and she's in her 80s and I say, how about you stop eating a bit of bread? And she's like, what do you mean bread? Every single time we sit at the table, there has to be bread on the table because that's how they got brought up. Bread was always on a table. If bread wasn't on a table, then something was wrong.
Yeah, breaking bread. Yeah.
And you're saying, get that bread away.
Yeah.
So exercise, right? Exercise, are you talking about walking? Are you talking about lifting weights? What are you saying when you say exercise?
I'd say moderate exercise is plenty for me. I don't like to go to the gym. My wife loves to go to the gym and work out. I myself don't like to do that. So I would basically, if you just walk around the block, once or twice or 3 or 4 times a week, that's plenty of exercise for most people.
Yeah, brilliant. Amazing. My photo just froze, so I apologize about that. But we're still recording. Everything's all good. So what would be some practical lifestyle tips for the audience to incorporate to prevent getting diabetes? I mean, you've mentioned some things if you already have diabetes, but what could you do to prevent the diabetes? Like what would be some tips that you could tell the audience right now to prevent diabetes and if they have diabetes?
Well, again, I'm a broken record because if you want to keep from developing diabetes, you have to get off of carbohydrates. A diet with low calories and low carbohydrates is the best thing you can do for your health. And if you combine that with moderate exercise, occasional fasting, I mean, if you stop eating at like 6 o'clock at night and don't eat breakfast, don't eat again until noon the next day, that's a sort of a 12-hour fast. That appears to help also. And again, you can take these weight loss shakes, and now what Lysulin has a shake that has both diabetes, glucose lowering properties, as well as low calories, low carbs. So those are the things to do if you want to stay healthy, is to help yourself by better managing your diet.
Yeah. And I love, Dr. John, how simple you've made it. You haven't made it complicated at all. You've made it to the audience to understand it as simply as possible. And you've given them the tools to take control of their diabetes, to take control of their health. So I love the work that you do. What's planned next? What's planned next for Dr. John's journey? What's next in your life?
Well, for me, it's like, as you can tell, I don't, my journey is, most of it is behind me. So for me, I'm just eager to help as many people as I can. We sell the product now in the United States. I'm always looking for distributors around the world. If you happen to know anybody in Australia who might be interested in distributing the product, you should send them my way so we can see if it's possible. So, I mean, really, my journey is to bring better health to as many people as I can while I'm still above ground, and do it without prescription drugs. Because to get, a lot of people say, well, why don't you get a drug clearance for your Lysulin? And the reason is because it takes a long time and a lot of money to get the FDA to approve a new drug. And at the end of the day, if we got Lysulin approved as a drug, you could go to your drugstore and just buy it off the shelf, lysine, zinc, and vitamin C. But we formulated, people also ask, can I just buy lysine, zinc, and vitamin C and do it myself? And the answer is yeah, but we've optimized the amount of the 3 important ingredients so that you don't have to do the work of doing multiple different tablets and the like to get to better health.
You've made it
we've tried to
simple
make it
for them.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the work that you do. And look, you're spreading such amazing information. So anyone who's listening who may have diabetes or knows someone who's got diabetes, definitely share this episode with them. Share the work that Dr. John does, the supplements and any of the information that he's got available. I'm going to put the website details in the show notes. I'm going to put links to the videos that we shared. And I'm also going to put links to the spray that Dr. John also mentioned.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want to tell individuals before we close off and let you go? Is there anything else that you want to share?
No, I just hope that people can help themselves to better health by watching their diet and watching their calories and carbohydrates. And if you can do that, it will just make your life so much healthier. So, and I wish everybody the best. And if I can help anybody in any way, they're welcome to email me or call me. I'll put my email in here too, jbird@jfbird.com.
Beautiful. And I'll put that in the notes also so people can contact you if they want to, which is so beautiful and lovely of you to give your email address out so people can contact you. Dr. John, I really appreciate your time on Natural Podcast. I appreciate you sharing all this information and giving hope to individuals with diabetes.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope we could just touch a few people. We've done a good day's work.
100%. Thank you for joining us on Natural Podcast. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. The content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Raguse and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. And in no circumstances shall the Natural Podcast, Mahela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.